Recorded?
Yeah.
Fantastic. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please do use the question and answer feature in Zoom, and we'll do our best to answer any questions that you may have. And this online webinar is more of a how-to guide and includes information on what is required in order for us to be able to release your grant, some top tips, and has some key points to keep in mind throughout your fellowship journey. Abigail will then be speaking about our useful resources, additional support that we'll be able to provide along the way, as well as considering the impact of the environment throughout your fellowship. Also, please do not feel like you have to write everything down in these slides, as all of this information is available via our Overseas Learning Handbook. So at this stage, I'm sure you'll be enthused to get your fellowship learning underway, and this slide contains some key questions and strings of thought to bear in mind throughout this journey, even before planning your itinerary. Firstly, be clear about your objectives. Is the change that you want to see on the issue you are tackling, and where is that change needed? Is it in your workplace, your local community, or nationally? Who do you want to impact or benefit with the change? And who do you need to meet with as part of your overseas learning in order to achieve this? Once you have completed your overseas learning, who do you then need to influence in the UK? And perhaps letting them know now about your fellowship will help you line up support once you have completed your overseas learning. So it really is about pursuing your own vision for change. You are the experts and you know what's needed, but be prepared that your thinking might evolve as you undertake your overseas learning. So now we'll come to the more practical side of your overseas learning, but please do bear those previous questions in mind as we go through this. So this contains the processes and procedures required to release your grant. Firstly, if you haven't already, in order for us to release any funding, please do fill out the common reporting standards and the terms and conditions forms and send them back to us. That was sent along with your grant offer emails, as this does form part of your grant acceptance. So this is the stage where the most of you are currently at or actively thinking about. This section will detail what is required in order for us to approve your itinerary for both travel and online learning, as they follow more or less the same procedure, as well as containing some key suggestions on how to structure your itinerary. One caveat is if you are undertaking the fellowship in phases. So, for example, if you're traveling to Australia and then you return back to the UK before traveling to the US, for example, at a later date, or if you're traveling followed by a period of online learning when you return to the UK. We only require the itinerary for the phase that you are about to embark on. So unless you're doing your overseas learning all in one phase, in which case we would require the itinerary for your entire learning. So our first recommendation, as you can see from this slide, is that both the countries and areas within the countries that you are visiting are currently safe to visit. And we recommend checking the FCDO website for the latest travel information regarding entry requirements and safety. So this won't impact those of you traveling to Western countries as much, but we do have quite a fair few fellows traveling to areas of the world where the FCDO guidance is constantly changing. We're unable to send any fellows to areas that are orange or red on the FCDO country maps, as that means our government has advised against all travel or all essential travel to the region. So please do check this before starting your itinerary planning. The next step would then be to reach out to the organizations or individuals that you are hoping to meet with while you are abroad. If you are already in contact with these individuals and organizations, and they are aware of your fellowship and have agreed to meet with you, then that's fantastic. And the next step is to confirm these meetings according to your timeline of travel. If you are not already in contact with them, we have sent out a letter of introduction to all of our fellows that should help you secure these meetings. Please do be ambitious. Aim for contacts at the top, because more often than not, if they can't meet with you, they'll be able to arrange a meeting for you with other colleagues of theirs. So when you do have the dates and framework in mind for your travel or online learning, please do build in some time for reflection and writing up notes while they're fresh in your mind. And do ensure that your days are not completely packed out with meetings, as fellows undertaking both travel and online fellowships have found that quite often one meeting will often lead to another. So one of your contacts will recommend somebody that you must speak to for your project. And so having the time to build those meetings into your schedule would be really beneficial. As every itinerary that we received is subject to approval, we do require some key details in every itinerary that we review. The itinerary should contain the dates of learning, so the date that you start and end your learning for online phases, or outbound and return dates of travel for travel phases. We also require all of the dates and time spent in between. So for online itineraries, we would need the countries and organizations you are speaking to. And for travel itineraries, we require the dates and time spent in each city and which organizations you are meeting with in those cities, just so that we know where you are on your travels in case of an emergency. Lastly, in order to approve the itinerary, we require at least one confirmed meeting per city for travel itineraries, or just a list of confirmed meetings for online itineraries. We require only one confirmed meeting for travel itineraries per city, because this essentially acts as your anchor meeting and allows itineraries to be flexible and account for unexpected meetings, which often leads to that magic happening whilst undertaking your overseas learning. Of course, you may wish to confirm multiple meetings within the same city whilst planning your itinerary, and that's great, but we only ask for one, as this allows the greatest amount of flexibility. So this is our basic itinerary template that can be found on the Fellows Resources section of our website. As you can see, it's rather straightforward and asks you to list the countries and places with dates in the left-hand column and the organizations you are hoping to meet with on the right-hand side. And the next slide I have contains a mock itinerary that I've drawn up to illustrate what a completed itinerary should look like. So as you can see from this itinerary, it clearly depicts the departure and return dates to the UK, as well as listing the country and cities that are being visited with the corresponding dates. It also clearly illustrates which meetings are confirmed and unconfirmed in each city, which allows us to review the itinerary quickly and efficiently for you. But please do not worry if your itinerary is not perfect the first time you send it over to us. We will always liaise with you and provide support in order to get your itinerary to a point where we are able to approve it and where you are happy with it also. Lots of our fellows have unique questions regarding their itinerary, based either on their project or the countries that they are intending to visit. So if you do find yourself having a question that may not be answered in this webinar, please do get in touch with us and we will be able to provide tailored support to you. Lastly, itineraries should be sent to Ellie for approval at least 8 weeks prior to departure and 8 weeks before the start of your online learning phase for online learning. So those are the processes involved in getting your itinerary approved, and this next section will detail what comes after your itinerary has been approved. We'll split this section up into travel and then online, as the processes differ slightly. To start with travel, once we have approved your itinerary, in your approval email, we will notify you that you're now able to price compare and book the most cost-effective flights or trains for your outbound and return international journeys. We use Diversity Travel as our travel partner, and on some international routes, they'll be able to offer a charity fare, which is completely refundable and amendable, and they also have a 24/7 helpline for any emergencies whilst abroad. If you do choose to book through Diversity Travel, we will be invoiced directly and pay the flight costs on your behalf. If, however, you find cheaper flights on websites such as Skyscanner or Kayak or Momondo, then please do send your receipts containing the price and outbound and return dates over to Ellie, and we will reimburse those for you within 5 working days. And a useful tip when booking your flights or trains is that it's often cheaper to book outbound and return journeys in one go rather than doing it in 2 separate trips. So after receiving your flight or train receipts, either individually or through Diversity Travel, we will then organise your travel insurance for you and reimburse you for your flight or train receipts if you have booked individually. You may also, at this stage, book accommodation, and you can also send us the receipts for this for reimbursement within 5 days. Alternatively, we will release your grant 8 weeks before you are due to travel. And so if you're traveling in a phase rather than for your entire fellowship in one go, the grant released will be in proportion to the length of time travelled, and we will reserve the other portion of your grant for your next phase. Once we have released this grant to you, you're able to book your accommodation at this stage too, and we do not need to see any receipts at this stage after this grant has been released to you. So this grant payment will include both your living costs, so accommodation, food and drink, as well as your grant for your internal travel. So that's basically it. So whistle-stop tour of the processes required for travel. And so now we'll briefly move on to the online steps. So this has pretty much been covered in the previous planning your itinerary slide, but this is just a quick reminder that your online itinerary should include the dates of proposed learning, as well as a list of the countries and organizations you are hoping to meet with during your online phase. And once your itinerary has been approved for an online phase, depending on the type of online learning you are undertaking, there will be two different procedures, both of which are rather straightforward. So firstly, as this applies to those of you that are working away from home in the UK as part of your overseas learning. So in your itinerary approval email, we will let you know that we require outbound and return travel receipts. You may also book your self-contained accommodation at this stage too, and send us the receipts for reimbursement. And we will then reimburse these costs within 5 working days, and the remainder of your grant will be sent to you 2 weeks before you are due to start your fellowship learning. So if you're carrying out your online learning from home, then after your itinerary has been approved, there'll be nothing further required from you, and you'll simply receive your grant 2 weeks before you are due to start your online learning. As many of you may fall within both the online and travel elements of these procedures, please do not worry about remembering every little step after your itinerary has been approved. Your personalized next steps will all be contained in your itinerary approval email that we will send to you. So this is just an overview so you know what to expect. So we do pay some costs outside of your grant, one of the main ones being interpreter fees. And so we pay interpreter costs on a case-by-case basis after your itinerary has been approved and your outbound and return travel has been booked. Please do price compare between different interpreters and send over the quotes for the interpreters to your program manager, as these are subject to approval. We also cover visas outside of your grant. So if you are traveling to a country that requires a visa, or the US that requires an ESTA, please do send the receipts of these over to Ellie for reimbursement too after booking your flights. And please do ensure, especially for the ESTA, that you are using the official government website to apply for your ESTA, a link of which can be found in our Overseas Learning Handbook. As there are lots of copycat agent-based websites that will charge an exorbitant agent fee to use their service. If you do have any queries regarding visas, please do contact your program manager. Thirdly, if you're traveling to any countries that require vaccinations to travel, then these are also covered outside of your grant, and please do send over a quote to your program manager for approval for these too. And once the vaccinations have been paid, please do send over receipts to Ellie for reimbursement. And lastly, we are able to pay up to £500 for one conference outside of your grant budget if we have not already covered these costs before. So we require a link to the conference, as well as the benefit it will have for your fellowship project, and these are also subject to approval. So please do send your conference requests to your program manager as well. So that's the end of the procedural side of releasing your grant to you. The next couple of slides contain some practical tips from previous fellows whilst carrying out your overseas learning for both travel and online. So these travel tips are geared towards your actual meetings and visits. Ensure that you prepare well before your meetings, so researching the organization you are meeting with and having questions in mind that are underpinned by the questions that I spoke about on the second slide beforehand. Also, be clear about the ground rules of any interviews or meetings beforehand, particularly if the subject is sensitive and confidentiality needs to be a consideration. Also, keep a daily record of your conversations and allow time to reflect on them and ensure that you process them before the next one, because it's very easy to forget. Some meetings may not be as fruitful as you would like them to be, but do not be discouraged by this. This is normal, and this has happened to many fellows on their quest for knowledge, and not everyone you meet with will contain the vital information that you're searching for. You may also meet people who advocate an opposing view to your own, and it may be challenging meeting with them. But these are also valuable experiences in your fellowship learning, as they provide you the opportunity to reflect on your own practice. So this slide contains a few tips for your online learning from our previous fellows. As you're not visiting the locations in person, it's even more vital to research the people and organizations you are speaking to before your meeting. If you can mirror the time zone of the countries you're meeting with, this is extremely valuable. We had a fellow a few years ago complete an online phase of his fellowship where he was having video calls with organizations from New Zealand and Australia. He adopted the practice of changing his sleep schedule to match that of New Zealand and Australia for the week or so he was conducting the meetings, as that meant he was fresh and energetic whilst carrying out his learning. You may also want to think about particular questions you want to ask the people you meet and conduct the meetings as semi-structured interviews. And if the person you are meeting with agrees, you may also wish to screen record the interview too. Again, I understand that this is a lot of information to process in a short period of time. So if you do have any further questions tailored to your own project, please do get in touch with us outside of this webinar, as we are here to help. I'm now going to hand over to Abigail, who'll talk you through the resources available to you throughout your fellowship journey.
Thanks, Nikesh. Yes, so the main thing to emphasize is that everything that Nikesh has shared already and that I'm going to share is available on our website. And in particular, you'll see the screenshot on the right-hand side there, the Managing Your Fellowship page of the website. So if in any doubt, go there. Nikesh has already mentioned you'll have had your letter of introduction, and we have heard from many fellows how useful that can be, not to underestimate how important a bit of letterhead is on the corner of a piece of paper or to be used virtually. So please, use that to open doors for you as part of your fellowship. The itinerary template is also on the website, and Nikesh has talked you through how to use that. The Overseas Learning Handbook is your go-to document, really. It's like everything you need to know is in there. So we would recommend you keep looking back at that to answer any questions. Also on the website are access to webinars, both past ones and ones that we'll be holding over the coming months and years, in fact. So hopefully there'll be an ongoing resource for you to tap into to get the most out of your fellowship. And you'll also hopefully have learned a little bit already in the information we've shared with you about your access to our mobilise groups, which are opportunities to connect with other fellows and maximise your fellowship that way as well. If all of that fails, and if you just fancy a chat anyway, please don't hesitate to get in touch with any of us, Nikesh, Ellie and myself. We've put our email addresses there, but hopefully you've got those already. And we're also very happy to take a phone call if you ring the office number that's on the website as well. And if we can't get back to you straight away, we will do so as soon as we can. Our jobs are to support you, so please, no question is too small. We're really happy to help as much as we can. Next slide, please. Okay, so other support, if the website hasn't answered your question and if we can't in a straightforward email or conversation, there are other ways in which we're trying to support fellows through their fellowship. This is the first time this year you'll have access to a employees assistance program, which the organisation itself has access to. So we've been able to extend that to fellows. And that gives you free, confidential, legal, financial, and medical advice, and access to, I think it's 6 sessions with a counsellor as well. We understand some fellowships that might be more useful for than others, and some fellows might find that more useful than others, but it's there for everybody. So please dig into that if you think it might be useful for you. The other thing that we offer is a kind of co-created, what we call safety plan. These are plans where we're just making sure that we've put everything in place and that you've put everything in place to keep yourself safe while you're on your fellowship. And that's both in terms of your physical well-being or your emotional well-being. And it varies depending on where you're going, who you are, and what your project is about. We've already identified a number of fellowships that we think that this might be useful. So when your itinerary is ready, what we'll do is have a conversation with you to work up a safety plan before we agreed the itinerary and let you go on your way. But in other instances, you might request that. You might think it would be useful actually for me to have a conversation with you and to just agree some ideas for keeping myself safe during the fellowship. So either way, we'll meet you halfway, and they're very much co-created plans. So we want to do them with you, not to you, as it were. And then the other thing to mention is one of the webinars that you'll be able to access on the website if you can't make it in person, as it were, is our self-care webinar, which will be on the 8th of August and thereafter on the website, which is going to be full of useful tips about how to look after yourself, your well-being, your physical health, how to avoid feeling overwhelmed and managing your time. As Nikesh was mentioning earlier, I think it's really important, and it's really easy to kind of lose control a little bit because of the enthusiasm which you might be wanting to indulge while you're away. So that's just a kind of a helpful extra way of managing that. Next slide, please, Nikesh. Obviously, at the heart of the fellowship is overseas learning, whether it's online or travel, and we are as keen as anybody else is to try and mitigate our impact on the climate. So some of this information, in fact all of this information, is on the website, so do have a look through before you get too much into planning your travel. And we've just put some helpful tips about tracking your carbon. When you're working out your itinerary, you can kind of calculate different the emissions depending on different routes. Thinking about travel routes as well. I saw there was a question earlier on about if it costs more to travel by train than to fly. Is that all right? And that's absolutely all right. We encourage that, as long as you stick within the budget that we've agreed. Very happy to look at different methods of travel. I know at least one fellow this year is traveling by cargo ship, so we're very interested in how that journey goes. But lots of access to information out there to help you make the best kind of climate friendly decisions. Also tips we've put there about choosing environmentally friendly accommodation. There are lots more ways in which you can seek out the most environmentally friendly ways to stay, and we've put a few ideas on the website, so hopefully that will be useful. And I think that brings us to question time. And I just thought I'll say again, for people who weren't able to join us at the beginning, we're really sorry about the technical issues many of you had in joining today. Please be reassured, that we've recorded the whole webinar and it will be on the website shortly, so everybody will be able to see what we said right at the beginning. But secondly, please ask questions now, and don't worry about thinking, oh, have we already covered it and you missed it. Just ask any question. We're happy to repeat ourselves here, as well as making the webinar available on the website. So over to you, and I think Ellie is going to field the questions, and the three of us will try and answer them between us.
I've been replying in the chat and scribbling furiously to make sure that we cover everything. First question was from Savannah that I think would be useful for everyone, is how do they know who their program manager is? So they know who to send their information to. So your program manager should have been listed on the grant award email that you were sent. So the first email notifying you that you've been awarded a fellowship should also contain which one of us is your program manager. And if you're unsure, please just do email us and we can confirm for you. Okay, then Murray France asked if we can repeat the information. I thought maybe we could go back to the slide with the information about when the grant is released to fellows, and that way everyone can have a little bit longer to read that in front of them.
Back to that one.
Then there was lots of questions about a conference, whether or not that conference could be UK based, whether or not it was before or after the fellowship or part of the fellowship travel, or whether it was to present your findings. And so I thought we could clarify that this conference funding that we're talking about is for during your fellowship travel and attending a conference while you're away. But there is an opportunity when you get back to apply for some funding related to sharing your findings, which you can use to present at a conference. So this is two separate pots of funding. There was also a question about whether or not it is one conference or multiple conferences.
So as long as it doesn't exceed £500, that's the limit for the conferences.
Then Sarah asked a question about what exactly we mean by outside grant costs, because there were some things that she had listed on her application that weren't mentioned on her award letter.
Yeah, so the things that weren't mentioned on your award letter are the things that we consider to be outside of your grant. So a traditional grant will contain your international travel, your internal travel for the inside the countries that you're traveling to, as well as your living costs. And so the four things that I mentioned, plus other ones, can be considered outside of your grant. So we'll pay them in addition to what you've been awarded in that initial grant email that we sent you.
Then we also have a question from Julie about, is it possible to join up with other fellows to do parts together? So if they have crossovers or similarities of joint meetings? I would suggest that, of course, that's possible, but it's not necessarily something we're able to facilitate. But if you're meeting someone on our Connect and Inspire event in July, where your work's very similar, you're meeting the same people, then perhaps you can collaborate that way. Use Connect and Inspire event to really get going. Sarah Yardley's also said that she's not received her introduction letter. I'll send that out to you today, Sarah. If anyone else hasn't received their letter, do just drop me an email and I will send it out to you again. Here we go. A longer question from Paul. Can we explain how we're expected to provide evidence of our grant spend? Are you expected to provide every receipt for meal or drink we have, or is it flexible on the way we spend?
So once we release your grant to you 8 weeks before you're due to travel, or 2 weeks before an online phase, we don't need to see any receipts. So your food, your drink, etc., can come out of that grant, but we don't need to see any of the receipts for it. So in essence, from our point of view, once that grant's been released to you, it's for you to use as you wish during your fellowship travels.
Okay. Then we have a question from Ellen about when organising travel, if she's in a country that's closer to her fellowship country, but she's not back in the UK, is she able to travel there directly rather than does she have to leave from the UK?
So you do need to leave from and go back to the UK from the purposes of travel insurance, because our travel insurance will cover our fellows from the UK and back to the UK. So if you do leave from the UK and travel back to a separate country, you will need to take out your own travel insurance in that regard.
Okay, then we have another question about connecting with fellows who are in the same country at the same time. Please do connect with each other. The Connect and Inspire event will be a good one to learn where everyone's going and roughly when, but we'll also use the mobilized networks that you've been added to. And you can connect with each other and let each other know where you're going and how you're doing on your travels there. It works very much like Facebook, but the only people in it are our fellows. If you've had any trouble accessing that, please do just let me know. Ellen's also asked a question about confirmation for her meetings. Do fellows need to show us those confirmations? We don't need that information. We trust you completely that these meetings are confirmed. So just indicate it on your itinerary. Then Joanna's asked about staying away for longer than the fellowship length and longer than 2 weeks of holiday, if an organisation offers extra time for learning.
So you can do that. You can go away for a longer period of time, and we have had fellows that do go away for a longer period of time. The only caveat in that is that you will need to take out your own travel insurance, as our travel insurance will only cover your fellowship period plus 2 weeks.
Can't see any questions. Has anyone got any questions that they don't feel like we've covered?
There are a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Yes,
as well,
just
Ellie.
reading about public liability insurance covering travel where we're professionals, and are we traveling for research rather than as a professional, and whether or not that would be covered. I think that would have to be a question for your insurer rather than for us. Eileen's asked about accessing the Mobilise network, you should have had a link to join the network. It would have been sent directly to the email address we have for you. If you haven't received it, I will send it out again. Ellen's asked, can we recommend how long we should leave post-travel, but before the final deadline to write up? So you have 3 months before your report is due, from the day you return back to the UK. And we're very flexible on that. And you can contact our colleagues in the comms team, in the engagement and knowledge team, and they'll happily chat to you about deadlines or support for your report.
Yeah, don't worry about it if it's taking longer. We understand how challenging it is. So yeah, keep the communication lines open, but we're very flexible about that.
Shaju, we arrange the travel insurance for you once we receive your flight receipts and your flights have been booked and your itinerary has been approved. So that's something we'll send through to you as soon as your flights have been either reimbursed or we've received the invoice from Diversity Travel for you.
Can we please confirm that the Churchill Fellowship for Life is not tied to the topic area and is more a general fellowship, and we're not specifically a fellow in a certain topic? Yes. Yes, we can confirm that. Happy to. Yeah, sorry, Nikesh.
Annie, yeah, I'll take Annie's one. So generally, our fellows don't have meetings at the weekend. They use their weekends to either explore the city they're in or write up their notes, or a combination of both. And so having meetings from the other 5 days, maybe a meeting a day or a meeting with a gap of a day if you want to write up notes, is probably preferable, because we do really find, and this is a constant theme from previous fellows, is that when they have a meeting with somebody, that person also puts them in touch with X, Y, and Z other people that they really should meet while they're out there. So having space and time for those meetings is really important too.
So we have 2 questions about doing separate trips, separate travel phases, and whether or not it changes any of the guidance that we've given so far. The only thing that changes is that you'll need to submit 2 itineraries, one for each phase of travel, and obviously make sure that it still fits within your budget. Savannah's also asked about how do I go about finding crossover with other fellows and overlap with other fellows. Our Connect and Inspire event will be the first place you can do that in person, but then do also make sure that you've had a look at the fellows directory on our website, and then also use the Mobilise networks to find any other information.
Omar, regarding the template guidance on writing the report, there should be a separate report writing guidance document on our website for you after you've completed the learning phase of your fellowship.
Fran has asked about traveling, having 2 weeks of holiday in neighbouring countries from your fellowship countries. Our travel insurance doesn't cover neighbouring countries. It would be a holiday in your fellowship country. You'd have to take out your own insurance for that trip. And she's also asked about, does it matter that our flights wouldn't be directly to and from the fellowship country? We're still able to reimburse that as long as we can see that it's the same cost and still within your budget. Sarah's asked about specific cultural awareness sessions, which is not something I think we've run before, but we would be interested to talk to you about it. Definitely, Sarah, please do get in touch. Everyone's saying they're very excited, which is really nice to see. Maria's asked about how do we need to finalize what we're doing every single day within the fellowship country? No, we don't need to know what you're doing every single day. As Nikesh said, we do expect you, or we do hope that you'll have some downtime to think about what you've learned at the same time. Fran's asked about the possibility of using translator costs ahead of time to get language lessons.
Yes, so language lessons isn't something that we would fund in regard to translator costs. The translator costs would be more used towards interviews that you're having with people in part of your overseas learning in different countries. So helping to translate or transcribe those interviews.
So then Sarah's asked about covering family visiting or accompanying you during your period abroad. Is that something we're able to fund?
Unfortunately, the fellowship is an award just for yourself, so just for the individual. So we can't fund any additional family members to travel with you, unfortunately.
But you are welcome. They can accompany you, but we're not liable for them, and our funds can't support them. But yeah, no reason why you can't.
And they'll need their own travel insurance as well. Yeah. Savannah's asked about doing her fellowship in 2 stages. Is it okay to organise the itinerary for the first point, get that signed off, and then do the second one? Yes, we're very happy for you to do that, particularly if you're travelling several months apart. Julie has a recommendation for everyone to, if you're not departing from or returning to the UK back, and you're wanting to travel after your fellowship, you might need backpackers insurance types, which is quite a helpful tip. Thanks, Julie. Bernie's asked about, do we need one report or a separate report for each country? Your report is a single fellowship report about everything you've learned during the course of your fellowship. Then we also have a question from Ellen about DBS, and if she needs a DBS check to complete her research, can we support that? And Arabella's also followed that up with a question on ethics and ethics advice. Any guidance on those?
Yeah, so Ellen, I would say to get in touch with your program manager regarding if you require a DBS check to conduct your research effectively, and we can tailor that towards you and help you with that. And Savannah, yes, if you have any questions or queries relating to your grant or additional funds, etc., then please do contact your program manager.
Arabella's also asked about the average number of meetings fellows might schedule per week of travel. I think the average would be too difficult to calculate because some people spend a whole week with an organisation while others might meet 5 in the space of a working week. So that's quite a difficult one to answer. But obviously we would go back to our guidance for you on thinking about having downtime to think about what you've learned, not overloading yourself whilst also making the most of all your meetings. Sarah has an additional question about translators. Is it best to get a professional, even when someone from the organisation says they can translate for you?
So we would advise to go with the most cost-effective professional translator that you can. If you're visiting or near universities, we've found that, especially in East Asian countries, language departments in universities will be able to help provide a translator at quite a low cost. So that's also worth looking into.
Suzanne has also asked about reports and report guidelines. There's lots of information on our website about the reports. You can go to the same webpage that Abigail showed earlier, and on the tab on the left, you'll see after your travel. I think the best guidance for reports is looking at the other fellows' reports that are published on our website, because you'll be able to see the huge variety of formats and styles that they've been written in.
Yeah, because I think it's important to say we're not expecting everybody, we're kind of go with what suits you and your project and your way of communicating and how you think you're going to make most impact with what you've learned. So yeah, it's not a one size fits all approach for the reports.
A couple more questions about costs. If somebody is charging for their time or training, can fellows use the budget to pay for that if they have that fund remaining from their accommodation?
So Joanna, the fellowship budget that you awarded is just for your travel, internal travel and living costs. So if somebody is charging for your time, I would get in contact with your program manager to discuss this.
Natasha's asked about running about creative workshops alongside meetings as part of her research. I think we need to specify we're using meetings in the broadest sense of the term. We're not expecting them to be formal across table meetings. We mean meeting people. Watsabi's asked about letting us know if one of the budget lines is over or under budget, if for some unforeseen circumstances, and whether or not she needs to let us know.
So when we release your grant to you 8 weeks before you're due to travel, you can use that budget essentially as you like. We've split it into international travel, internal travel, and living costs for you. But if you do make savings on one, you can use that towards another. That's completely fine. Yeah.
And then Maisie's asked about Connect and Inspire and bringing an additional guest. It is a fellows only event unless you require a carer or a support worker in some other way.
Just to touch on Watsabi's comment again, your example of if a translator ends up costing more than foreseen, that wouldn't come out of your original budget, as that's something that we fund in addition to the grant that you were awarded in your initial grant email. So please do get in touch with your program manager for translator costs.
I think we have captured all the questions, unless I've missed one or anyone feels like we didn't quite cover what they
I think
were
if you have any questions that are unique to your project or your travel, then please just do get in contact with your program manager. We can arrange a call, a Zoom call, a phone call, and we can just talk you through everything. And that might provide more insight than asking the question here if it's more tailored to your unique needs and requirements. Fantastic. Thank you all for joining. It's been wonderful for this hour. I'm sorry for the technical delays at the start, but this will be on our website in the next few working days, in the webinar section under Managing Your Fellowship.
And hope to see some of you on the 3rd.
Yes, and we hope to see you at Connect and Inspire.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.